Australia, 2012. What number convention is this? Is this the 10th one? It's freaking crazy. That means that I've spoken at 8. The first convention that I spoke at was 2008, but the first convention that was ever held was actually in Orlando, Florida, and this kid put it together. And it's totally fucking crazy. He got some of the best speakers in the world in terms of personal development and stuff that he was interested in, that matched his ideals. Personal development, better skills with women, and trying to be a better man. And through the template and through the vision of a 17-year-old kid, that's pretty crazy. And the formation of that, renting the rooms, orchestrating the speakers and the production of it. Later in 2008, when I came on board, it was already a professional act. You know, it had amazing technical crew. The caliber of speakers was even better than it was the year before. And ever since then, I've seen it grow. But what makes that grow, and what I was saying is, all the speakers up here, we have our own individual message. We have our own things that we want to say and share, and what we think and value is important to us. However, that is all through the filter of one guy, you know, who started this off when he was a kid, and still to this day, you might even say he's kind of a kid, but he's done so much with his life. He's a role model for what you guys can all do with what your idea is right now, what you guys think is important and want to manifest into a dream. That guy is Anthony Johnson. He's doing his first speech of this convention, which is really cool, and opening up the day. I hope you guys have already realized this convention can change your life, because this guy has proven to me that anything is possible. Anthony, come on.
Thanks, man.
Yes, sir. Hugs. Let's do it.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, Steve. Morning, guys. I got a good morning or? Morning. Thank you. Thanks for showing up nice and early. I know Sunday morning's the toughest. That's why it starts the latest, because it's just, you guys go out at night, you're tired, you eat a lot of food, a lot of curry last night. Oh, God. Anyway, the title of my speech today is An Introduction to the Psychology of Romantic Love. It's a topic I have never covered before at this convention or anywhere else as far as speaking. I've done a little bit on my blog and writing, but nothing as far as speaking. And this topic is somewhat unusual for me to cover, because usually at this convention I cover the convention itself, the direction I want to take it, the ideal man, health, fitness, nutrition, exercise, topics that are not psychology, romantic love, conceptual, deeply conceptual, things like that. So this is new, but I'm excited to present it to you because it is based on a book, as you can see at the bottom here, that is one of my top 3 favorite books of all time. My favorite books of all time that have impacted me the deepest, the most profoundly, are The Psychology of Romantic Love, as you guys will see here, The Fountainhead, and Body by Science. So this book, as we'll get to in a second here, is just huge and completely underrated to a degree that I can't even put into words. So this is the book. Actually, if Steve, can you go to the top there? I have the book with me. Thanks. Oops. This here is a copy of the book, a picture. It was originally published in 1980. It was updated and expanded in 2007, and as of this presentation, the author, Nathaniel Brendan, is still alive, although from what I understand, his health isn't that great, so unfortunately, I don't know how much longer that'll be the case, which is very sad. Oh, sweet. This is also the physical book. It's my first copy. I read through it in a day and a half. It's pretty quick. It's not super big, but it's big enough. Moving on. The introduction will be through exploration. So we're going to, as one of the speakers at the convention once put it about exercise, we're going to explore these ideas. I say explore because these ideas are going to be, well, in general at this convention, there's nothing that's not controversial. Everything at this convention, every speaker, every idea is entirely against conventional wisdom, against the grain, and it's not heard almost anywhere else. This is no exception, except I would say that in particular, it will even be controversial in this room. So kind of in and of the 21 convention, even more so than usual. Anyway, exploration through introduction, or introduction through exploration, excuse me. We're going to explore what romantic love is not first, followed by what romantic love is, And then we're going to cover my top 10 myths of romantic love that are, in a way, inferred from the book, from the author, from his ideas. And yeah, it's important to note that the majority of this presentation consists of ideas that I have inferred. So I don't represent the author. I am not the author, obviously, and I don't represent him officially in any capacity. Just a huge fan, and I think I have a pretty good understanding of the book and the ideas within. And if there is a direct quote from the book, I'll put that in quotes, and you'll see his name next to it. That's how you can know that it's officially from him. Let's switch here. What romantic love is not. Romantic love is not a literary invention, an adolescent fantasy, an unattainable dream, an irrational pursuit, a temporary neurosis, a false hope, a fleeting emotion, or an immature ideal. One of my favorite quotes from the author Nathaniel Branden is the opening passage of the book, before you even get into a chapter. And it's that, above all, romantic love is not for children, not in the physical sense, and not in the psychological sense. What he means, and what I mean when I put that up there, that's a paraphrase, is that, much like Steve mentioned at the introduction of the speech, a person can have, that he implied, a person can have a physical age that's very obvious, or not so obvious in some cases. I look much older than I am. I guess because I grew up in Florida, I have like little crow's feet. So you have a physical age, but you also have a psychological age. And as Steve implied or hinted at, I'm young, I'm 24, but most of you would say that I look and then I talk and I come across as much older than that. And that's because for the past 6 years of this convention, I've traveled all over the world and I have packed like decades of experience into a few years. So for those of you that might have met me and thought I was older, that I was close to 30 or something, or who knows, that's not the case. And that's because, at least I feel, within myself as I experience my life, I feel much older than I physically am, which is just 24. Still a youngin'. But this is important for romantic love because, just like it says literally, it's not for little kids. But it's also not for little kids who are little kids in their heads. It's not for children. It's not for men who are in their 50s who still experience life as a child, who are still, to some degree, to a large degree or a minimal degree, children, immature. They're easily upset. They're easily affected by the outside world. They don't have a good handle on their life. They're dependent on other people, and so on. So it's not for kids physically, and it's not for kids psychologically either. No matter what your physical age is, completely irrelevant. So, what romantic love is. Romantic love, despite it being known as an ideal, I think it is so misunderstood that it is accurate to say that it is an unknown ideal, just because of the degree that it's deeply misunderstood. It's a deeply mature pursuit. It's a fully rational endeavor, as we'll explore in a minute. It is a source of profound ecstasy or joy. It is a response to our deepest values embodied in another person, or multiple persons. It is an expression of the best and highest within us, and it is one of the greatest challenges you can ever undertake, as a man or as a woman. There's only one in here, but for any of you watching later on the internets, it's not easy. It's extremely difficult. I mean that literally. It is this is the author's claim, and something I agree with wholeheartedly, that it will be one of the, if you ever undertake it, one of the most challenging things you ever do, and one of the most rewarding, as a direct consequence. Perhaps one of the best summaries of this concept of romantic love that I've ever seen is from Nathaniel Branden. My favorite is here. Romantic love is a passionate, spiritual, emotional, sexual attachment between a man and a woman that reflects a high regard for the value of each other's person. The biggest takeaway from this quote is that it's something that's global. It encompasses everything important that you can even name off the top of your head that would be related to this concept. It's all of it at once, simultaneously, in one condensed concept. So to visualize this or exemplify this, you could think of the term personality, which is a pretty broad concept, and you could also think of the term sense of life. A sense of life would encompass, personality would be encompassed within a sense of life. A sense of life would be global. It's an even broader term than personality. It's how you approach everything in life. Not just how you interact with other people, but how you experience your own life, internally, inside yourself. When you wake up in the morning, why you get up. Not just the fact that you're getting up, or how excited you are, or how fucking tired you are, or whatever. It's everything all at once in the same concept. Romantic love is like that. It's not, there are specific definitions to it, but even so, it's very far-reaching, which is why this quote is so good. To sum up, romantic love is essentially the diametric opposite, the exact opposite, of everything you've ever been told. In movies, in the culture, in religion, in schools growing up, government-run schools, in art, in literature, in everything. If you want to know what it is, a good place to start is looking at what you're told, and then the exact opposite of that, to the T. So we've covered briefly what romantic love is not. I mean, the book covers it obviously a lot more in depth. We've covered what romantic love is, and now we're going to explore my top 10 myths to consider for daily life. Things that you can apply, I think, pretty immediately, regardless of whether or not you're in a relationship or even close, or whether it's even of interest to you. I know a couple years ago for me, this would have been like, I was interested in going out and hooking up the chicks in the same night, and that's it. This would have been to me just like, what? Why do I even care about this? I think by the end of the speech, if you do happen to be one of those people, this will really pique your interest. I know when I read this book, it was just a game changer. I mean that in every sense possible. Get it? A little double entendre. So myth number 1, sexual exclusivity as necessity. It's not true. Sexual exclusivity, meaning just being sexually exclusive with one individual person, a monogamous relationship, A, does not necessarily result in mature romantic love. So if you get into a relationship and you start dating a woman and it's monogamous, the idea that this would automatically result someday in you guys falling in love or something like that is just complete nonsense. It is so far removed from an automatic process, there are no words to describe it. It is not that. It is the definition of, if you just think of it in car terms, as manual. It's something you have to make conscious decisions at every point. It does not just automatically happen, as much as you've been told that. Mature romantic love is possible in non-exclusive relationships. I'm not claiming that this is common or that it will ever be common, but I believe it's possible. That's certainly the conclusion the author makes, and it's something I happen to agree with. And I haven't even experienced that, but it does seem to make sense, despite what you've seen in movies, how it can only be between one man, one woman, or I guess in homosexual relationships too, maybe. But the idea that, yeah, it has to be just one-to-one, I don't think that's true. And we'll get into why in a second. And to really hit on that, when people say that, whether it's a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a random blogger, someone who's just writing on the topic, I think they are oversimplifying an extremely complex topic. There are a lot of nuances between two people, two human beings, that are capable of conceptual thought, and the topic, if you read the book, you'll see, even though it's not that long of a book, the topic is immense. It is really, really deep. It is not easy to understand just with a quick glance. Even with a good understanding of psychology and of philosophy, it's not easy. It's something that takes a lot of time and effort to understand. The same way male-female relationships in general, like at this event with all these coaches here you guys see, is a big topic. This is a 3-day event. It's the 10th time we've done it, and we'll keep doing it. And there's still decades to go before, if not ever, that we fully, completely, definitively, finally understand it. In spite of the coaches you guys have seen who have fantastic understandings of this, of those kinds of dynamics. So, to quickly exemplify the non-exclusive thing, if you look at the letter A at the bottom here, that can represent a guy, and then we'll say B is one woman and C is another woman. These little black lines represent the relationships. While obviously A is the common factor between these two are not necessarily ever interacting. Even if they do, the relationship you hold with one person is that relationship. It is not another relationship. So when I say that this concept, romantic love, is possible between or in non-exclusive relationships, I mean it, and this is sort of how it looks in real life, as then expressed in just letters and arrows. But yeah, they don't have to, contrary to what you've seen in movies, they don't have to, there doesn't have to necessarily be this immense drama with resolution at the end where someone's fucking crying and everything's just falling to shit. It is possible. In fact, there's some speakers at this event who could probably actually add a lot to that topic. Moving on. The second myth is that love must be forever or it's a failure. Probably the simplest way to put this is that eternity is a poor guidestone for success, quote unquote. So if a relationship lasts 40 years or 4 months or whatever, and then it ends for whatever reason, that does not mean it's a failure. To say that just because you're ending the relationship, ergo it's a failure, it's just ridiculous. A great way Nathaniel puts this, not in the book but in other writings, is that if human beings had an average lifespan of 500 years, and you got married in your 30s, or started some kind of relationship and never got married or whatever, to think that the relationship would last 470 years-ish, that kind of foresight is impossible. Human beings are not omnipotent. You cannot see 400 years into the future. So it might be easier to say that you can see 50 years into the future or whatever, but that's still, where do you draw the line? And so I think when you really drag out the lifespan of a human being to an imaginary 500 years, or maybe someday it's 500 years, to suggest that, you're going to start a relationship that's going to last 400 years, it's just absurd. There's no way you can see that. People change over time, usually for better, but sometimes for worse. So to meet a person and suspect that both of you are going to, or rely on the suggestion that both of you are for eternity, going to be on the same paths that really line up and make sense, it's just complete nonsense. So a relationship failing, if you guys have been in one and then it's ended, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure, no matter what it ended like. Obviously, there are some examples perhaps you could bring up where it really was a failure, but it's not going to be all the time. Things can end on good terms, and they can be a success, even if you guys part ways. Another interesting point is that the phrase, as far as I understand it, "till death do us part," as said in marriage, was made when the average lifespan was like 30-something. So it was supposed to last like 10 years, and then someone would die. So this idea that it's used in movies, and whenever somebody gets married and whatnot, it was made at a time when, it was like, you're expecting to be married for 8 years, not 80. Myth number 3, love must entail marriage. First of all, marriage is a completely separate concept from romantic love. People get married all the time that the marriage was arranged, maybe they secretly hate each other, have contempt, resentment for one another. They're two separate things. They do not necessarily have something to do with each other. People can also be deeply in love for their entire lives and not get married. It's a choice. You are not obligated to ever get married or something like this. It's just, as we'll discuss, it's just nonsense. It's also important to note that marriage in society is a legal contract. Sometimes a little bit more, but fundamentally that's what it is. So again, it's not this conceptual relationship you have with another person. It's a contract that you write, and it's recognized by a government and so on. Separate issue. It's not romantic love. To confuse these two is deeply erroneous. It's also important to note that marriage today is dangerous for both parties, at least in the United States, I think elsewhere as well. I mean this in the sense of a legal system, it being deeply subjective, and you never really know what you're getting into. So it's really hard to go into it. There's a favorite comedian of mine named Bill Burr. I don't know if you guys know him. I met him a little while ago. He has a part of his skit one time. He was like, "Yeah, marriage. It's where you get in line to lose half your shit." And this works both ways. It's not as often, at least in the U.S., I think, that women lose half their shit. But it can work either way. Both people can get into a marriage. It's a contract they have between each other. To go through divorce is expensive, and you never know what the end result's going to be. You could each end up really, really regretting the decision to get married. You also have to be careful in the U.S. There's something called like common law marriage, which means that if you live with a woman for X amount of years, you become automatically married, which sucks. Watch out for that. And it would suck it's funny, but it would suck because it's not intentional. If you didn't know that, and she didn't know that, and all of a sudden you have this like legally recognized marriage that neither of you necessarily wanted, that can be really dangerous. That can have unintended consequences. As I mentioned a moment ago, any mandate, obligation, or duty to marry is antithetical to romantic love, regardless of where it's going from. And I hope that reaches the depth I'm trying to capture. That I don't care where it comes from, whether it's tradition, whether it's your culture, whether it's your society, whether it's some sort of government-mandated thing, or who knows. It needs to be a conscious decision for whatever reason you want to name. It must be something you do on purpose, not just by accident, not because someone told you to, or forced you to, or whatnot. You should resist that. You should take this with great care, plenty of thought, and extreme caution. Myth number 4, physical attraction is shallow. This is important to understand in general, in the context of male-female relationships, but especially with romantic love. Because, this is a really common myth that if you like a girl because of the way she looks, and that's important to you, you're a douchebag. You have to like her for her personality, for the values. The values she holds are important, but it's like all this other stuff has to come way first. And physical attraction, sexual attraction is a distant second at best. And even then, you should feel guilty. You should feel ashamed of that. And that, as I think a lot of speakers here, that Steve might be one of the leaders in that, telling you that that's not true. And that's what I want to get across here as well. So sexual physical attraction is immensely important in general and in specific to romantic love. You should take no shame in valuing physical sexual attraction points very, very highly. Sexual attraction, this is a little bit of a separate point, it cannot sustain romantic love in itself, but it's a requirement. You can't, to go without it you're on thin ice. To have a long-term relationship with someone that you're not deeply and consistently physically attracted to, you're skating on thin ice and you're setting yourself up to really run uphill for years to come and just make things harder on yourself. So it is important. It's a requirement. I even have kind of an analogy here. So in reference to nutrition, sexual physical attraction is at once the equivalent of both outstanding taste, so you enjoy it very much, but it's also an important nutrient. It's something that if you go without it, over time, it will catch up to you. Just like vitamins and minerals. You don't need them for the next month, but 2 months from now, you're going to be hurting. You're going to have some kind of conditions come up, some kind of deficiency, and you're going to pay the price for it. So over time, the need will surface, and you can't get away from it, I think. Myth number 5, sex is negative, bad, and shameful. This first point kind of brings us into the foresight, or into focus. I'm skeptical in general, but if pornography is immoral, it is so because sex is so good, not because it's so bad, which is what you've been told knowingly or unknowingly your entire life, from society and from religious institutions in particular. Sex is bad, so if you film it, that's also bad in itself, just because sex is bad, which I think is just horrible. That's like one of the most destructive ideas you can hold in life, that sex is something you should be ashamed of, that it's bad, that it's evil, that it should be in a dark room with, not that it can't be private, that's a good thing usually, to make it more enjoyable, but the idea that it's something that it should be a taboo and locked away and just bad, that's really, really bad. And in particular, it's very destructive, I think, for romantic love, to actually have that deep down in your subconscious, like an idea you have kind of floating around that's destructive. To the contrary, sex is a celebration of self, of life, and of reality, which is the exact opposite of something that's evil and bad, by definition. something that I inferred from the book, as well as The Psychology of Romantic Love and elsewhere, is that sex in romantic love is the meeting of self-respect and admiration for another human being. So it's something that's great, fundamentally, deeply, definitively, across the board. It's not evil, it's not bad, you should not be ashamed of it. You should not be ashamed for wanting it all the time, as much as you want, indulging yourself and trying new things. A couple quotes that I really like from the book. I'll read them to you in case you can't. This one's directly from Nathaniel Branden. Sex is the assertion that your partner is a source of joy to you. This is true in romantic love, as it is true in general with someone you've just met recently. But it's even more true in the relationship. Another quote I liked a lot: the bed is like a metaphysical arena in which we play out the basic drama of our existence. This is something that, when I read it, I shut up pretty quick. That was one of the truest statements I'd ever read, and I've definitely lived that in my own life. That has been, my experiences have confirmed that wholly and across the board. Myth number 6, love is selfless. As opposed to selfish. And when I say selfish, we don't need to get into it in there, but I'll get into it here. When I say selfish, I don't mean petty selfishness. I don't mean lying, cheating, stealing, self-destructive behavior. I mean it like Yaron Brooks said at this convention just a few months ago in Texas and in London. Rational self-interest. Just like, as Nathaniel says, your next breath of air is selfish. You want to live, so you're going to breathe. You're going to eat. You're going to drink. You're going to enjoy life. These things are selfish. You enjoy these things. But they're rationally selfish. You're not selfish. You're not hurting people when you breathe. You're not hurting people generally when you eat, unless you rob them. And drink, and enjoy life, and meet women, and so on. So selfishness in rational self-interest, the best sense possible. Not what you've been told about selfishness as far as it being lying, cheating, and stealing, which in my opinion is not selfish, but self-destructive. And is obviously destructive to the people around you. So, one of the greatest aspects of mature romantic love is that your self-interest, your selfishness, grows to deeply encompass another human being. That is almost a direct quote from the book, and I agree with that deeply. If you're in a committed relationship that you care very much about, well, if you value your partner very much, your interest in life, how much you care about, I mean, this is seen in movies, sometimes it's not too bad, but you care about the other person almost as much, or maybe even more than you care about yourself. So it becomes something where your interest in life, I mean, she is just on every level with you, which is something that's really rare and really powerful. As far as selfishness and being selfish and selfless, as far as the myth goes, you should not only bring your best self to the table in a romantic relationship, I think it will be absolutely necessary in the long term. So when someone says that love is, in any sense, selfless, this is just by definition false. You really need to bring yourself to the table, the best self possible, the self that you have developed, that you have created, that you have authored in your own life. There's no way around it. Nor would you want to avoid that in any capacity. Finally, to choose a woman out of billions and assert the fact that she is of particular and immense importance to you is one of the most rationally selfish acts you can take in life. When you choose a woman to be in a relationship with, of any degree, of any caliber, you're declaring that she is more important and she's of greater value and importance to you than all the other ones, no matter how many you've met, whether it's 10 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. So this is just the act itself of being in a relationship and of choosing her and of judging that she is of great value to you and she shares your values in life and you want her to be a part of your life to a great capacity. This is just selfish in itself. You want that, and it's a good thing. It's not selfish in the self-destructive sense, obviously. Myth number 7, I used to fall from this one back in the day. Love is irrational and above reason. First, reason is not knowledge. Reason is thinking. It is a process by which you obtain knowledge. So reason is not the knowledge. It's how you get it. You think. I would argue very passionately that nothing is above reason, above thinking, and above reality. Which doesn't mean you can just think your way into acquiring any piece of knowledge that may potentially exist. There's a couple more obstacles before you do that. Just measurement is one of them. How you measure the information you have presented to you. Getting a little bit off topic, but nothing is above reason on this earth. Nothing that you're going to encounter cannot be thought about and solved. If you think hard enough and you're persistent and you work hard and you take life seriously and you take reality seriously. Mature romantic love is only possible with a strong connection to reality. If you do not have a love affair with life, with reality, with this world, with earth, with living here and enjoying life, it's just not possible. You're not going to have it. You're going to have something much more, if it can even be called any degree of romantic love, it would be immature romantic love. It would be something that is very chaotic, very dramatic, something you've probably seen a lot of your friends go through. I know I have throughout the years. You don't even need to see it physically. You can just look on Facebook and see people just posting all this shit about their life. How crazy it is with their, in particular with partners and such. Another way of saying this is that mature romantic love is not possible to individuals or couples who are deeply irrational. I don't just mean this either in the sense of like someone being a drama queen. Because some people may have personalities that are more prone to conflicts like this surfacing. But I mean beyond the point of a person's personality or particular approach to life. Kind of surfacing conflicts and creating excitement. I mean beyond that. I mean the point where they're sabotaging themselves, sabotaging their partner, lying, cheating, stealing, cheating on their spouse or partner, and so on. Moving on. Myth 8. Love at first sight. I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Thought about this. You guys aren't particularly probably prone to this, but it's important to discuss. Both for the concepts it entails, and then for anyone on the internet 10 years from now watching this that is a little more susceptible to this, perhaps. So, first of all, this myth exists, and I assume everyone here is familiar with this. Is anyone not familiar with this? Love at first sight? Probably not. We're all from Western culture, so to speak. So this myth exists because sight, as far as I understand it to be, is our most important sense. If I were to go around this room and somehow force you to lose all but one sense of your five senses, the one almost all of you would keep is sight. You would forego hearing long before sight, taste, touch, taste, and so on. So it is immensely important. There's a reason it's not, yeah, I knew I loved her when I first heard her, or when I first tasted her. It's always the sight. Like, this isn't, I mean, that might be one of them for some people, but it's not usually it's not popular, and it's not popular for a reason for that kind of phrase to be beyond the point that it sounds kind of funny and such. There's a reason it's sight. It's sight. You get the most data inputted into your mind through sight, more than anything else. So that's where that comes from. And I think if you understand where it comes from, that can help explain a little bit more about it and how to get it out of your head, if it happens to be in there. By my judgment, this myth mocks, more than almost anything else, a deep, complex, highly abstract concept. The idea that you can have true, mature, deeply romantic love in 5 seconds, it just makes a mockery of something that is very complex, takes a long time to develop, and can be developed over a lifetime. There's no limit to it. So to say that you just look at somebody and that's it, it's just nonsense. Can you have a deep affinity for someone very quickly, just based on physical attraction? Sure. Can that feel emotionally like a lot more? Sure. But that doesn't change what it is. It's just sight, it's just physical attraction. And as important as that is, as I discussed, it's not the entirety of human life, of reality, and of romantic love. That's something that's a lot bigger, a lot broader, and takes time. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes your mind, it takes thought, it takes reason, it takes your emotions, it takes everything all once at the same time. So the idea, again, that you can just look at somebody and then all of a sudden you're in love is it's just nonsense. It would also be important to note that, so it doesn't happen overnight, romantic love, but it also doesn't develop into something that is deeply mature overnight. Again, it takes time. So two people, if they really hit it off and they meet and they talk throughout the night and it becomes something just amazing overnight, I mean, in the most extreme of circumstances, maybe that could be called immature romantic love, maybe. But not something that's deep, that's mature, that's developed. So it takes time. Again, effort, time, reason, thought, emotion, spirituality, whatever you want to say, in that mix, just about. Doesn't happen overnight, and definitely doesn't happen just in first sight. Myth number 9. Sex without love is empty. Nice follow-up to love at first sight, I thought. So this myth says that meaningful relationships are not possible, but in fact they are, outside of the realm of romantic love. An example I came up with for you guys that I think would be very easy to understand is think of James Marshall. James Marshall understands himself, he understands life, he understands women very deeply. Do you really think that his sexual encounters are meaningless and empty and worth nothing? They're, just like he discussed, literally. They're important to him. They're not just random encounters that he just has and fucking forgets about. They're important, they are deep, they're fulfilling, they're gratifying to him, they're satisfying. And for the woman as well. When they meet, they both profit. They have a great experience, and they're both better people because of it. And they have a great time. So, yeah, sex outside of relationships can be fulfilling. It is not necessarily empty. It surely can be, but it is not necessarily so. I would also argue that theoretically, you can go your entire life without experiencing any degree of romantic love. You can live well, and you can achieve an incredible level of happiness. You just might be missing out on a great secret, something truly great. Myth number 10, love is unconditional. This is a big one. First, to love is to value, in general, the most general sense possible. That's what that means. To value something is to judge something to be of value, by definition. To love anyone is to love them on the condition that they are who they are, and that they do not become someone you disvalue. They do not become a monster over time, someone you want nothing to do with, which they certainly can change into. An extreme example would be that Hitler's immediate family was not unconditionally obligated to continue to love him when he started slaughtering people. If anyone in your immediate family became a rapist, someone that's physically or sexually assaulted people, or a murderer, you would not in any way, and the same would be true for anything, any kind of friendship or relationship. It's just complete nonsense. They have broken the condition that they are who they are, that they are not someone who's a murderer, someone who's a killer, someone who you want nothing to do with. And it doesn't have to be that extreme, though. If a person you love, family, friend, intimate partner, fundamentally changes who they are for the worse, you are absolutely not required to continue loving them. They have broken the condition. So what I mean when I say fundamentally is that they don't just change superficially. They don't get sick and gain like a little bit of weight, and then you're like, oh, fuck that. That condition broke. She ain't thin anymore for like just this next few weeks. I mean, fundamentally. A couple years ago, Jason Savage, he introduced a concept to me that was profound, that in a way I was aware of, but not explicitly or consciously. He told me that the pursuit of health is a sign or an expression of self-esteem. So, what's important here is having self-esteem or having fundamental values that are important to you, a woman or an intimate partner. So, again, with just physical appearances, if that changes just temporarily, that's not that important. What's more important is that she has a pursuit of health, that she is a happy person that you like to be around, that you enjoy. Not the day-to-day small things that can change for better or worse very quickly. It's the fundamentals that matter. to just rip off DJ Fuji. Fundamentals. So, those are the 10 myths. That's a crash course in this book and in romantic love. Some further reading beyond the book, which is just The Psychology of Romantic Love. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, so on. Would be a follow-up book, this one, that is not very well known, but is really, really good. It's hard to find, but you should be able to get it on the internet. And that's the Romantic Love Question and Answer book. It's a direct follow-up to the book. Came out 3 years later, I want to say. It's just as long, and it's just a Q&A, but it's really, really good. And he does it with his wife at the time. Another book from him this is my second favorite book from him, right after The Psychology of Romantic Love. It's called The Art of Living Consciously, The Power of Awareness to Transform Everyday Life. This is fantastic in general, but in specific as well, I believe, for romantic love. As far as being conscious in your daily life and bringing, just like he says, 5 to 10% more consciousness and awareness to your interactions, to your endeavors, to your pursuits in life. It's really, really good. And I mention this in specific because he is known as the father of self-esteem. So he has like a whole list of books on self-esteem that are really, really good. But that's what he's mostly known for, and books like The Psychology of Romantic Love and this book, they kind of get brushed to the side. They're of secondary importance behind self-esteem books from him. So I would say first look at these, because I think these, not saying anything about the self-esteem books, they're great, but these are harder to find, and they're not quite as popular or discussed as often. You can also check out the author's website at his name, so it's nathanielbrandon.com. He has an entire section on romantic love that I think is really, really good. It has books, articles, and audios from speeches like this he gave back in like the 80s. They're great. They cost a couple bucks. There's MP3s, and they're really, really good. I would highly recommend them. They're absolutely worth like $9.95 or whatever he charges for them. And that's it. That's my presentation on The Psychology of Romantic Love, a brief introduction to it. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thanks, guys.
Questions for Anthony Johnson?
Okay.
Thanks, Anthony. It's a great talk. Just
Thanks.
wondering, why do you think that society places such a big value on marriage as it is?
He actually, I should have mentioned that. There's actually an entire section in the book. He starts off, it's really good, but it's not as good as the rest of the book. The beginning of Psychology of Romantic Love, he goes into history. So it's like maybe 30, 40 pages on the history of romantic love, how it's developed throughout the ages, in different cultures and religions and so on, and how it's been treated. So the book answers that really, really well. I would say, I'm not even sure if this is his exact conclusion, but mine is that it mostly has to do with religions. Religions have wanted to control sex for hundreds or thousands of years. That's why it's such a big issue. Or, that's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy there. I think that sex is such a profound celebration of your life and of happiness on this earth. It's something that people want to control. So to control that, they create things, and I'm not bashing marriage here, but they create things like marriage, and then they create certain rules for it and such. That sex, for example, sex outside of marriage is evil, you're going to go to hell, you're going to burn for all eternity from this God who also loves you or something. So it's things like that they create, and it's not like some big conspiracy, but it's a system of control. So they make it, and it's easier to control people, to get people fearful of you, to have them do what you want, and to, I guess, make them obedient, which the guys in here, I don't think any of you are very obedient, so power to you. Fuck, I ain't. Does that answer your question? So I think it mostly comes down to religion. It's not even, there are a lot of traditional, cultural things too, but most of it, I think, would stem from religions. Does anyone else have a question? No? Yeah? Okay. That guy?
There we go.
Oh, actually, all of a sudden 0 to like 3. Yeah.
Thanks for the speech. I'd like
Yeah.
to know, how does the psychology of romantic love impact offspring?
children.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about marriage as an obligation, and
Not an obligation.
well, it's a legal obligation at least.
If you get into it, it's liability more likely.
But with,
Yeah.
with social norms and everything, it
Yeah.
just seems that raising children, it's pretty much an obligation to be married. Otherwise, they're gonna be socially backward. I mean, we're a progressive society, but we're not
Yeah.
that far.
I think that was, for example, bigger when I was a child, and it's gone away a little bit. But you're right, it's still around. So the question is specifically, so children and marriage, so it's not really related to romantic love per se? It's just more so like marriage? Okay. He has a section on that, and he also answers it, I think, quite a bit in the Q&A book, so the follow-up book. First, I would say that something I read the other night when I was reading it for like the third time is that a lot of people, they feel obligated first and foremost to have children. So it's another thing that, religions have like ingrained people to do. Well, like you guys have heard here even, you go to school, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, and then you fucking repeat the process forever and ever and ever. You make more of this kind of religion, or more of that one, or more of that one, more little offspring to populate it, and then to feed the coffers, or whatever they call it. I would say that having children is a huge responsibility, and that any sort of obligation that you should have children at all to begin with is just deeply antithetical to taking full responsibility for what you're about to do, to make another human life. The same is also true then with marriage, as I discussed. And then, yeah, as far as being obligated to get married just because you decided to have kids, let's assume that someone decided to do so rationally and fully aware of everything that was going to entail. Yeah, I think it's something you should fight against. I think you should disagree with it. I disagree with it, and you should speak out against it. That just because you have a child, then you automatically have to get this legal contract for it. I don't think so. I think there are ways around it. I think that even if there's consequences to not getting married, it's worth fighting those. It's worth disagreeing with them. It's worth paying whatever the short-term prices are. 18 years later, when they're an adult, it's not going to matter. So I'd say, yeah, stay away from the obligation, that supposed duty that people make up for you, that society makes up, that you just have to get married just because of you get in love, or just because someone told you to, or just because you had kid pop out, or whatever. Don't do it unless you're fully ready to do it, I'd say. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Shoot.
Anthony.
Oh.
So with marriage, like when you say psychological age, you have to be mature enough to go into it.
That's another thing too. Yeah, the marriage rates are like the failure rates, as they call them, are like astronomical for getting married in your early 20s. It's like 98% you get divorced. It's huge.
So like,
Sorry to interrupt.
What sort of, like at what point would you say what psychological age?
I mean, you should question in the first place whether you even want to get married at all. Is it necessary, or is it even beneficial? I'm pretty skeptical. As far as it like being like a legal contract specifically, I think that you can have a lifelong, if you want, this is what you want. If you want some lifelong relationship with another woman that's deep and that's intimate and that's fulfilling, I mean, that can last 50 years or more, and you don't have to get married. I think it's just something you've been told and you've seen in like 1,000 movies and TV shows that you have to do this, you have to do this, and you have to do this, and you have to fucking do this. It's not true. Now, will women be aware of that automatically off the bat? No. I mean, women in particular seem obsessed with like weddings and marriage and dresses and like what the fuck else. Yeah, you should, gently educate or nudge her to question these things if they're really of value to her. If they so happen to be, so be it. But only when she is like fully aware that, she's been fed this fantasy since she was fucking 2. And just things like that. Yeah, you should. Does that make sense? Yeah, I'm kind of just rambling here. Yeah,
All right,
again,
Anthony,
stay away from the duty, the obligation.
We're short on time. There's one more question.
We should have actually a few minutes.
Okay, well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So, but we are short on time. We're about 30 minutes behind.
That's right, we started a little bit late. Okay.
Okay, mine's a quick hook, I think, anyway.
Shoot.
I just wanted to touch on something you covered near the start. It's, are you saying that there's no benefit to a monogamous relationship?
No, not at all. Yeah, I hope I didn't start that off too non-exclusive. I think monogamous relationships are great. That's what I had with Marilee up there, the redhead. I think monogamous relationships are great. 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 I think monogamous relati Yeah, I think there's actually a speaker here that is very in support of monogamous relationships. Not at this event, but at the Texas convention this year, named Greg Swan. So, in my opinion, most people are actually going to benefit the most from a monogamous relationship. But I don't think it's going to be everyone. I think that's kind of what I was hinting at, is that there will be segments of the population where guys just don't want that. I think I know some. Well, they'll never be happy and truly happy for, the long haul in a monogamous relationship. But I think that's the exception. I think most people will benefit from that, from a lifelong partner who you are sexually attracted to, physically attracted to, a lot. And that can last over a lifetime. It might not be as intense as it was when you were like 21, 50 years later, but it's possible. I think that's certainly something you can attain. That's an ideal, that's achievable, and that, yeah, it can be done. So does that answer your question? Yeah. Monogamy is, I think, great. But, yeah, it's not going to be for everyone. So, anyone else?
All right, yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit more on common law?
I'm only familiar with it as it's practiced in the U.S. It depends on which state you live in the United States, out of the 50.
The reason I ask is because it seems like it's the same thing as marriage. So why not get married if it's the same thing? Just to keep everyone else happy.
Oh, well, what I was getting at in the speech is that you should be careful of common law. You should find out about it and then avoid it. Because it's not in Florida, but other states, if you just live with a girl and pay the bills together for like 7 years or whatever, you're automatically married. Automatically. You don't have a say in the matter. That's kind of what I was getting at, to stay the hell away from. You need to watch for that and stay out of it. Rather than, just staying away from it. Just, again, well, in that case, it's an obligation that's forced on you, unknowingly. But, what's your question exactly? I'm kind of losing train of thought here. Sorry.
Well, he was asking about common law marriage, which is mainly an American thing, and it's different
Yeah.
from state to
I wonder if it
state.
exists in Australia. Does anyone know? Yeah, so he just said they have in Australia de facto relationships that build after 7 years. That's like in a lot of states. 6 months. Fuck that. God, you guys are fucked, man. Sorry.
In some U.S. states, it's 6 months.
In some U.S. states, 6 months. So yeah, it's something to be. No, I would say no. I would say find a way. Move, get away, run. I'm sorry, man. I know you like where you live or something. Yeah, there must be a way around it. In the U.S., I think there's things you can do in certain states where you can, if you write out explicitly that you don't want this, I think you can avoid it. So it's not always going to be forced on you. It's just kind of, it happens to a lot of people unknowingly. And then they break up with their girlfriend, and all of a sudden they have like this court or a judgment against them to lose half their shit. So just be aware. That's kind of, this whole convention, a big part of it, is being more aware and being conscious in your life and looking for stuff like this that are bad arrangements people before you set up and that you just get sucked into without knowing it. So watch out for things like that. There's a lot of things in life like that if you don't pay attention, people will suck your soul dry. And this is one of them. If you don't want marriage, and you get forced into it, that's just horrendous. I think it's a tragedy. That's an abomination. So, even if you have to move, I don't know, man, fucking move. It's worth the hassle. It's worth the fight, because someday I think that can be defeated. That can be changed. We don't always have to live like that. You can win that fight. Things like that are horrible, I think, can be reversed if you fight hard enough.
All right, guys, let's give it up for Anthony Johnson.
Thanks, guys.